Episode 30 with Jasmine Gill on the 9 Point Start with a Dream podcast.
Welcome to 9 Point Started with a Dream podcast. Our goal is to showcase the stories of athletes and the community that supports them by being authentic about their journey. Here's your host, Jacolby Gilliam.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This episode we have Jasmine Gill, professional basketball player overseas. Jasmine has a story that I think everyone can relate to in some form of fashion, but no one talks about it. You know, it's like the mental health when it comes to sports. The feeling when sometimes you just feel frozen in your own mind to kind of figure out how can I make the next move. So a great story with her. You're really gonna really love her journey and kind of what she's doing now. Her version of greatness through basketball and through outside the sport as well. So hope you enjoy and let's get to it. Hey, how's it going? Good, how are you?
Pretty good.
Where are you at now? Are you still, what is it, Prague, right? What was it?
Yeah, basically, I'm in Czech Republic still. Still now. So how have you been? It's been a while. Not a while, but.
Yeah, it's been busy, but it's all good there. Can't complain. Yeah. Season going good for you?
Yeah, well, it's had its ups and downs. I'm just managing the best way that I can. There's things that are out of my control, you know, and we've already talked about that. I learned how to deal with that, so just keep going. I mean, you know, the troubles and stresses of yesterday or the day before that, they don't matter. You know, just adjust, keep moving, kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I've been building on and living on. They're great. Some games are great. Some games are out of my control, you know, so just keep going.
Definitely, that's all we can do.
Yeah, I've progressed a lot though off the court since we talked. Done a whole lot necessarily. Got a logo made. I bought a domain for a website. I'm actually kind of building it a little bit now. I've been building building my brand, building myself. You know, we talked about that. I needed to get a website. I needed to start branching out and kind of scratching the surface on, you know, what I wanted. Who is Jasmine Gill? So I kind of took, you know, your advice, and I finally figured, you know, fully figured it out to where I can like tell somebody or tell you without saying or like you know, having to really process it. So I created this website called Just Global. And I'll send you my logo. My logo is JG, and in the middle of the G is a globe, and like the tagline is just we're just global. And I got that from my grandmother, basically when she was like slowly passing away from lung cancer, like 2016. I was like, no, I'm going to stay here with you. I'm not going to go to my next season, you know, XYZ, blah, blah. So I'm just like, and she was like, I remember like, you know, some words. She was just like, no. She was like, you go be, you know, unique, innovative. You go be global. You go travel. She was like, I've lived my life. And I'm like, what? Because when I created the logo, it was just a JG, you know. And I'm like, but I can't just, if someone's like, okay, what does that stand for? They're like, well, Jasmine Gill. I'm like, you know, like you said, who is Jasmine Gill? And I'm like, she's a global, you know, professional basketball player, you know, things like that. So I'm putting it together. I haven't had a chance to kind of, you know, tell you I appreciate, you know, especially the question that you were asking me in the email. I go back to them now, like just to, you know, kind of like that line sticks in my head. Like, who is Jasmine Gill? Like, what makes me mad? What you know makes me happy? And like that's been helping so much. Like even it's just the simple thing, like three, 4 simple questions, like with 5 words in it, not even, you know, full sentences. So it's been like off the court has been really. Don't get me wrong, I still love basketball, but it's good when you find that balance. Kind of the things that I didn't have in college necessarily, you know what I mean? That understanding my identity, my character, and things like that. So it's been solid. That's just a brief update for you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, like it's cool. Like I can see your growth and like the clarity that you have now. So that's cool to kind of just to see. And like that was only about a month ago, whatever, you know. So that's cool. Like that's dope that you're actually you're putting moves out there. That's dope.
Yeah. I told you I was though. Like once I could, like it's crazy. I was one night I was up, like, and normally like back in the day, I would be up to like 4 or 5 in the morning thinking about basketball, losing my mind. And I was up like thinking about like, what is JG outside of Jasmine Gill? You know what I mean? I'm just like, yo, what? I can't make this up. I think it was like 4:35, and I roll over. I had paper, I had the computer, I had stuff everywhere. I'm like, yo, what am I gonna do? And I was like, yo, you're like a global, worldwide, international. You know, granted, everybody that travels overseas there are, but I feel like just like not just like just JUST. It's like it's just period global, and I just kind of want to tell the story, like, you know, through that I've been kind of designing clothes, and I've been talking to some, like, you know, wholesale guys in China and things like that, and they've been designing some things, you know, not too expensive, you know, just man, just really like just trying to scratch the surface on a bunch of stuff. So
I love that. That's
yeah.
like, I'm pumped now, like just like hearing that. So let's kind of dive into this right here. So like the people that are listening right now, I kind of want to give them an insight on Jasmine Gill. I kind of know a little bit about. I want them to kind of understand, you know, where Jasmine started and where she is now, and kind of where she's grown the process. So the first question I want to start, everyone comes on, is when you were younger as an athlete, what was one of your bigger dreams or goals you wanted to achieve?
Actually, believe it or not, I wanted to play baseball. I played baseball most of my life. I wanted to be the first woman to play in the major leagues. And I didn't like softball. Like, I didn't like how big the ball was. I didn't like how, you know, how it was kind of like, you know, not necessarily dumbed down, but it was a smaller version of baseball. And I was like, no, I want to play with the guys. I want to, you know, I want to experience what they experience. I mean, because I think women can, if, you know, we really put our mind to it. Now, when I was younger, I was traveling with like Little League and things like that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to play baseball. Like, and when I actually realized that, like when I finally realized that, oh man, like I can't play baseball. Like, you know, in the MLB, I was like, okay, well, what's next? And it still wasn't basketball for a while. Like, I tried so many different. I tried track younger as a little kid. That didn't work out either. I also tried soccer. I hated getting kicked in my shins and my ankles and things like that. So, but ultimately, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, the first woman.
That's I would have thought that's dope. So
Yeah.
so when you kind of, so what about baseball really made you kind of gravitate towards it? Just to be the first woman, or like what was like your really drive behind that?
Because I was really intrigued of how talented you really have to be. You think about it. You have, you know, well, on the major league level, you have a small, you know, white ball coming at you with 96, 90, you know, 97 miles per hour, and you have to connect with that with a small stick, basically with a stick, you know. And it's just like that takes so much hand and eye coordination, so much accuracy. And granted, you know, the glove is different when it comes to catching and things like that, but that's coming at you fast as well. And so I was just extremely intrigued at how talented and how, you know, people are like, oh, well, baseball players are not athletic, but like athletic is just not your ability to jump and, you know, or not your ability to, you know, how fast you run. It's like how you move and how you see things, how you observe things differently. And like, and that's what I think people don't necessarily understand about baseball. And at that age, I understood it. I understood how difficult and how skilled you really had to be. So I was like, man, I can do that. I want to do it. I want to try to do it.
Perfect. So when you kind of realized that dream wasn't going to be reality, when did you kind of decide on basketball and kind of pursuing that dream?
I realized that baseball wasn't going to be, I want to say, 7th grade. And they were like, Jazz, you got to play softball. I tried it. Don't get me wrong, I did. And I just didn't like the way the ball felt. And I want to say 7th grade. How old are you? About 12, 13, maybe roughly. So that's when I had a cousin. He coached the basketball team, and he was like, "Hey, Jazz, you know, you're tall, you're skinny, you're long, you know, just come give it a try." And I'm like, "No, I want to play baseball. Like, if I get a chance, you know, I want to be outside rolling in the dirt and practicing catching and, you know, doing stuff like that, and like in the field playing with tennis ball and a base, you know, different things." Like, And my cousin, he literally like, begged my mom and begged us, no, just come one day, you'll like it. Oh my God, Jacolby, I was the worst basketball player ever. I mean, like out of all my friends, even still, not to this day, but out of everyone, that played that I grew up with, I was always the worst. Terrible. Like terrible. People ask me today, like, when did you start playing? I was like 13. And they're like, man, you're 28. You didn't start, early. I was like, nah, I wasn't really a fan of basketball. So like I said, my cousin, he convinced me to play AAU. I started playing. I still didn't like it because I honestly and truly, I didn't like to be touched. I just didn't like, like how it was always, not necessarily physical, but you're always being pushed or basically, the physicality. I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of, someone else's sweat being on you. It was just so many different things. And I was like, oh, I'm not feeling this. So that's kind of basically when I started like playing basketball. I want to say about 13 years old.
Okay, so now you're out on this in this new sport, right?
Yep.
So and you're not good.
Yep, not good. Terrible.
What kind of kept you kind of going back?
What kept me going back? The fact that people kept saying like, "You're tall," like that I never forget that line stuck with me. Like I would be in middle school and I had this PE teacher. I never forget him. His name we called him Superman, but his name was Jay. And Mr. Williams actually. So he called me Sticks, and he was like, you're lanky, you're small, you're fast, you're agile, so many different things. I'm just like, if someone else tell me that I'm tall one more time and I should be playing this because I'm tall, I'm gonna lose my mind. And so I kept going back, honestly, Jaco, because of that one line. You're tall, and this is your, this is fit for you. And like in middle school, I kind of, scratched the surface and became, better. But friends and like, most of my, I would say, best friends or childhood friends, they were all still always better than me because they put more time and effort. And some of those girls, they have been playing since they were like 6 and 7 years old. And I'm like, no, I was playing baseball. I was, outside rolling in the dirt and stuff like that. So I wasn't thinking about it basketball.
So it stuck with you that kept saying you were tall, right?
Yeah.
So when did it kind of all kind of click though to say, I want to pursue this thing like the way I wanted to pursue the MLB?
When I realized that I could go to college for free. Someone told me that, you can get a scholarship playing basketball for free. And I'm like, and granted, I didn't fully understand it, but I'm like, wait a second, like a full ride, like, not have to pay for any education, nothing like that. And they were like, yeah. And because, I don't like to ride on the whole single parent household, but it's the fact, my mother was a single parent. So I'm like, wait a second. And me and my mom like, wait a second, like, hey, we're talking like free education. So let's try to put time in. Let's try to put effort in. So my mom, taking me from gym to gym. And back in the day, there wasn't like 24-hour gyms. So it got to the point to where I was working out every day after school. I was, staying extra in practice. I was getting up early going before, or on the weekends, I was outside, on concrete playing with the guys, in the gym with the guys constantly. I say most, like the guys around my neighborhood are, is what kind of helped me develop that like second alter ego to where like, Jazz, you got to go get it. Like just be beyond driven to get that free education. Like, and that's really what it was about. It was about being, a student athlete first. You get what I'm saying? So it wasn't about, okay, you're going to be on an athletic scholarship. No, it's like you're a student athlete. So go get that full scholarship. And from that point on, once I realized that, like, scouts start coming to games, and that drove me like higher off, even further. It was like you walk in the gym as a 14, 15-year-old, then you 16 and things like that. And you're seeing like coaches on the sideline with NC State jackets on, you know what I mean? Duke jacket, Carolina, East Carolina, West, different coaches, and you're like, man, like, hold on, like this is something pretty cool. Like this can be a career. And that's kind of when I started pushing even harder.
So you're pushing harder, you're kind of seeing the future of what this game could give you, right?
Yeah.
So was there ever any doubt in your mind that this wasn't meant for you?
No. Not after I started, not after I started going, no. No one could tell me that I wasn't going to play basketball on a collegiate level and be somebody and be something.
So for anyone listening right now that has that same aspiration, right, what would be just maybe just like one word of advice that you would give them, just kind of have that laser focus?
The mirror. I always tell myself the only person that can tell me no is the person that I look at every morning in the mirror, and that's myself. I don't know, like you asked the other day on one of your posts, what's the advice you can give someone chasing their dream? Rome was built in a day. And I have to tell myself that today, still to this very day. But if I had to tell someone, I would tell someone, never let they or men tell you, no, you can't do something. And that's how I felt. I was like, no one is going to tell me that I'm not going to play on a collegiate level, on a high level at that, and be good, but the person in the mirror. And that's kind of something I tried to live by looking in the mirror. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't all just peaches and cream in high school and things like that. But I use the mirror as that ideal image. And the image is who I'm looking at. And so if I build myself the way I want to build myself, so when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm looking at something that I built. So I should be able to hold my head high and be proud of that person. And that's kind of what I live by basically now.
Yo, that was fire. Like that last part, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and it's something I built. So I have to kind of hold my head high on that. That's powerful. It's almost like you're seeing your reality, but also seeing your future at the same time. Dope. So you achieved that version of greatness. You got to college, right?
Yes.
You're getting it paid for. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah. My collegiate journey, so to speak. It was, let's see. I wouldn't necessarily say. I'll just start from the beginning. Now, if I had a me, it would have turned out, differently. Basically, I feel like during that time where, granted, I'm not that old, but I personally feel like, there was nobody, telling me how it was going to be when I got to college. You know what I mean? There was no one telling me, the things that you're going to go through, the things you're going to experience and stuff like that. I honestly feel like I went in, with just the advice of my mother, and her advice was just, listen, all I want you to do is graduate, get your degree from college. Granted, she wanted me to play basketball because I was there to play basketball as well, but her main focus was to graduate. And so that, that's what I had to go on. So just imagine, being 18 years old and you 17, 18 years old, and you're stepping foot on campus, but not having no idea. And I went to an ACC school to start off with. So, our preparation, our egos, our mindset, our mentality, you kind of had to come in necessarily prepared. And Jacolby, I'll be honest, I was far from prepared, for what was about to hit me necessarily. So I don't really, it's not hard to explain, but the beginning was only rough because I wasn't prepared. But I don't think anyone is prepared, but you may have people that give you advice and tell you things, but I didn't have those individuals that were capable of telling me things, because I was the first person to go to college in my family. the very, very, very first. So, you know, my mother couldn't tell me what basketball in college was going to be like. My uncles couldn't tell me. My grandmother couldn't tell me. You know, cousins, no one could tell me. So I was legit cold turkey, like just, and on top of that, playing basketball.
I can relate. I remember, like, for me, I was a walk-on, so I had a little bit different journey. But my first day of like practice, I realized it was almost humbling. Like, yo, you aren't as good as you thought you were.
Exactly. But it was also, you're not as good, and I had that too. I'm not as good as I thought I was. So it was extremely, extremely humbling.
Yes.
But at the same time, it still was like the person in the mirror was still chosen out of all the basketball players coming up during my era. You know, I was still chosen by these coaches. You know what I mean? So I still necessarily had that to go on, but it was also humbling. Like, Jazz, you're not as good as everyone hyped you up to be in high school necessarily. It's just like, wait a second, you might need to recheck the person in the mirror a few times just to kind of, you know, sharpen them up a little bit. But yeah, like what you just said was spot on. Like, it was extremely a humble experience for me as well.
And I think too, like, just from like seeing like other athletes as well, like, you know, if a lot of us go through that kind of experience of getting humbled in our first year, and if we don't kind of have that mentality that like, I'm gonna earn my keep, it'll break you, right?
Yes, it will. And I wouldn't necessarily say that broke me. It was, I don't know, not my first 2 years they were different. They were actually, you know, I learned a lot, I achieved a lot. I got a taste of the whole political side of basketball, because I mean, anyone knows, you know, I'm not speaking anything false, that basketball is extremely political. And I got a huge taste of that, you know, my first 2 years. And, you know, it was, you know, nothing disrespectful, but it was just a reality. It is what it is. That this is a political business as well. Even though you're in college, it's still a business. So I would say my first 2 years were not necessarily like developing, but well, yeah, I would say developing, humbling. And it was kind of like a mature identity build necessarily.
So what do you mean by it was a mature identity build? So like, if you just, you know, to peel back all the layers right now and just, you know, just kind of share your truth, what does that mean for you?
Growing, you know, kind of growing and developing yourself both mentally and physically. You got to understand, you know, when you start playing on a collegiate level, not only are you learning mentally, but the physical part is really extreme. You know, you're running, you're lifting weights, and so you're growing, you know, as a young lady, as a young man or whatever, both mentally and physically. And mentally, you're growing because you're by yourself. I know people are like, you know, oh, you're not by yourself. You got your teammates, you got your coaches, you got, you know, your friends you meet in college. No, you've left the nest. You know, you've left home. Even if I know people are like, oh, well, you know, my school was right around the corner. You still left. You know what I mean? You're still living in a dorm. You're still kind of basically on your own necessarily. So that is like a mental thing in itself, to where you have to figure out a way, like on your own, how to mature, how to grow, how to find a different identity other than the identity that you had when you were in high school. Because your identity doesn't change, but it evolves, it elevates, you know, it becomes something stronger, something different than what it was when you were necessarily in high school. And I think once I realized that was changing, and, you know, I went to my next phase of life when I realized, okay, hey, you know, I don't want to play at Boston College anymore. You know, I want to transfer. I want to be closer to home, because, you know, I want my family to be able to see me play. I want them to be able to see the person that I'm maturing and growing into be. And that's when I was like, okay, hey, it's time to transfer.
So when you started, like, you know, you're going through growth and you kind of thing, some reality to what the business is, I guess you can say, of athletics. You had to transfer. How are you doing, I guess, in the sense of the game? Like how are you managing, the court is through you going through all this? Like, was all this kind of affecting your game?
No, I wouldn't say it was, because when I got to James Madison, I had a chip on my shoulder. And I was like, look, I'm going to keep, evolving. I'm determined to be, this great athlete that I set out to be when I was 17 years old, stepping into college. So like my game, it has started to evolve and elevate. And, my coach, he was really, 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 really adamant on developing players in their individual skill and, their mindset and things like that. It was a mental game along with a physical game, at the next school that I went to play at. So my game was elevating, my mind was elevating, everything, but it did get to a point to where things started to shift. And it was like, I don't know, like the shift was extremely different for me because it was something I wasn't used to necessarily, but it wasn't a physical shift, it was a mental shift. And I had no idea what that was because I had never ever experienced it before. And it goes back to the whole looking in the mirror type thing. And some days I would look in the mirror and then I had no idea what I had built thus far from like I want to say my junior year, stepping, into college, into a new school. I felt an identity shift. And I didn't know who to ask, who to talk to, a mentor or someone like, to ask, like, have you experienced this? Or, like, are you kind of feeling yourself a little differently? I didn't know.
From that standpoint, I know, but we talked before, and you kind of said that you went through a period where you just felt stuck, right? So you'll be on the court and just freeze.
Yes.
So
it got, those days became like it started to happen a lot necessarily. Like I had spent so much time working on my body physically. Like I'm talking, Jacolby, I was, like I told you before, I was staying in school all summer, all preseason, all postseason, everything. I was just school. I didn't go home. I didn't do anything. I just was basketball. Be in the best shape that you can be in to perform at your highest level. So like, as I said, like it wasn't a physical issue that I was experiencing. It was a mental shift, and to where some days, in practice, I would just really blank out. Like I would freeze and I would just be stuck. And it was kind of like it was an echo, in the gym. And it was 15 players in there and 4 coaches and, screaming. It was a lot of things happening, but I'm just on the floor, and like someone would have to be like, yo, Jazz. And I'm just like, what? And it would happen to me in games too. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like I would really, really space out. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. Like every day I would just go to my room and I would just sit there and I'll be like, all right, you're just in a slump. You're missing shots. You're missing layups. Your body's still good. Everything's still good. You're still in shape. Like you don't need to do no extra cardio, no nothing. Everything's all right. You get out of it. And it got worse. It got to a point to where like my coach would, even if he like, just yelled at me about something, I would instantly get stuck. And I couldn't like get myself out of it. And I was just like, yo, what? Like I said, like what is happening to me? I had no idea what was happening to me. And as most athletes would say, oh, like you said, you're just in a slump. But I started to slowly realize that, hey, this is not a slump. Like something could possibly be wrong. But then again, I'm like, no, nothing's wrong with you, girl. You're just, young and you're going through different, changes. But I'm like, what changes am I going through? I'm in shape. I can play basketball. Like I had everything, the strength, everything. But my mental, like, it's something I never thought that I would experience, because I feel like, my mother and, my grandmother and people like that, father built me to be headstrong as is. So I'm like, there's no way. Like I'm strong enough in every aspect, but I wasn't. I wasn't strong enough. I was having a lot of mental breakdowns, and it started to necessarily bother me because I was having them I started to have them in games, and it's moments in games like big time games because I can't even remember, because I would just be standing there spaced out, just like I was just running up and down the court by myself. And mind you, like it was a packed stadium, and I just felt like I was just doing, intervals, just up and down, up and down. The coach could be yelling and like, saying stuff to me, and I wouldn't hear it. I would hear nothing but like, this little silent noise all the time. I'm like, what? I had no idea what it was, man. I'll be totally honest with you. I had no idea.
When you're like in those moments, right? How did you find yourself, I guess, being aware of it? Was it just like after the fact that you kind of came out of it? Like when did you kind of realize it is happening?
When I was sitting on the bench after being taken out for, basically like my coach he would say, you don't have any energy, you're being lazy, you're not playing with, you're not being aggressive and things like that. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, yes, I am. Like, I didn't work this hard to be lazy or to not have energy. So I'm thinking to myself, yes, I am. Then I'm sitting on the bench like, no, you're not necessarily. You can't be because you're sitting right here and you didn't work that hard to sit right there. And so I would realize it when I was on the bench. But even still, like I was still airy. I was still spaced out. So I honestly and truly, Jacolby, I wouldn't necessarily say I fully understood or fully realized it. I did know that something was wrong with me. But I only knew that because I was sitting on the bench. And like I said, I knew I worked too hard to be sitting on the bench. And so I was just trying to figure out why. And I still call it a slump, but it wasn't.
My experience, I know I put a lot of pressure on myself, and when I kind of did, I kind of put myself. So like when I ran track, whatever the gun fired, I would just tense up and run so stiff because I wanted it so bad. Do you think for you that's what it was? It was a lot of pressure on yourself because you knew you wanted to be the person in the mirror that you built yourself up to be.
No, I don't think I put a lot of pressure on myself because I had already, I don't know, like I said, I had already built the person that I needed to be. So why would it necessarily be pressure? You know what I mean? Like I had worked extremely hard for it already. So why was it considered, like, why would it consider to be pressure? I honestly and truly think it was just I don't know, like I don't really know. Like I don't want to say it was pressure because I don't think it was. I don't necessarily know the word for it, but maybe you can kind of scratch the surface on it a little bit. But I don't think it was like, I don't think I had put too much pressure on myself, because I was on a well-balanced team. You know what I mean? So there wasn't, so much pressure for me necessarily. You know what I mean?
Definitely. So just in like so was it like a common theme though when we kind of felt this, I guess, anxiety or this kind of like feeling like start happening, like a certain moment every game?
Asking like what would trigger it? Not feeling. I would say so. If I'm in a game and it would happen, not feeling secure. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but that's the only word that I could think of that would necessarily trigger it. And feeling like, feeling just like, alone on the island. And sometimes I feel like that, during games when I'm like, how is that even possible when you're out here with 4 other players and, 10 people basically, 13 if you want to count the referees, but it would be like, I just felt alone, just by myself. And I just felt insecure. I felt unsafe. I felt like there was, no belief, no trust, no nothing in me as an individual, as a person that I was. And I had no idea where that was coming from, because I felt like I didn't need that to come from individuals because I got that support from my family. You know what I mean? But obviously I did because I started to feel like that when I was in games. Does that make sense?
Definitely, yeah. Like you kind of just felt like it was just you.
Yeah, it was just me. I just felt like I was just by myself. Um, and that wasn't like I didn't like that. I didn't like to feel alone. I didn't like to feel, not, unsecure. Um, and I think that's something that triggered. And also feeling like that on top of, I wouldn't necessarily say yelling because that could just be me, being soft, but like, and not yelling like, oh my God, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like just to hear a yell, I would just, kind of just blink, really fast and blank out. And then that's when I would go into that tunnel, that whole, like necessarily by myself where it felt like I was just sitting in like a closed space or a closed room. And it was just, like I said, like a lot of echoes. And then that's when those feelings start to come. Feeling untrusted, no belief, not secure, things like that. And then that's when the mirror became so different because I was looking at a person that I didn't build. So it's like, dang, how can I hold my head high now? Because this is not who I built. I had no idea who I was. I had completely lost my identity. My last, I would say my 5th year in college, it was, and I don't know, I just completely lost control over who I was.
At what I remember you talked about it before, and you said like you kind of felt it, and you kind of walked away from the game.
Yep.
Was that during the same time period? Was it before? Was it
Uh,
after?
it was in the same mix. Well, first, I went to like sports psychologist. I went like I had even had my professors while I was in grad school. Like me and her, we would talk after after class, before class, and not even about my education because my education was still fine. We would just talk about basketball and just seeing how I was doing, how I was going, if I needed to talk, if talking would help. But it was like, I couldn't explain to her what was happening to me. Um, and I had no idea. And even my sports psychologist, I would just sit there and do the same thing to him. I would just talk, and nothing was helping. And I started to realize that nothing was helping because I could only help myself. And I had to figure out a way to necessarily dig deep and help myself because I was struggling from like a mental illness necessarily. And they were like, they weren't saying it was okay to be depressed, but basically they were saying necessarily it was normal, and what you're experiencing is normal. I'm like, you can't tell me that I'm in a basketball game and I'm blanking out, I'm in practice and I'm stuck and I'm spacing out, that this is normal. Like you're not going to tell me that at what I was probably 21, 20, somewhere in there. And I'm like, you're not going to tell me that. It's like, can no one tell me that spacing out in a game is normal? Like I know people space out, that's just because you just lack some focus, but I was focused. I was prepared. I had everything that I needed to be the player that I wanted to be in college. So when, people, and that's kind of when like my sports psychologist would tell me, hey, it's normal, you'll get past it, things like that. I'm like, okay, it's me. I have to do it on my own. No one can talk to me about it. No one can tell me how to do it. I have to figure out what it is that I need to do. And it had gotten to the point to where I no longer wanted to sacrifice my character, my identity, my self-dignity for man, money, or sport. And so I was like, all right, look, Jazz, you're going to take a leap of faith. You're going to make this big sacrifice, and you're just going to risk it all, but you're going to risk it all for the person that you need to become later on, in your future. And I made the decision to leave college my 5th year. I waited until because the entire season, I want to say what season starts around this time now. So I left in, I want to say January 4th, 2013. Yeah. January 4th, 2013. I left after we had a game. We had just had a game. And even prior to that game, like I had already felt like I was going to end it. I was just I was like, if this game, if it happens to me this game and I'm still, shaky, spaced out, like, my mind is going all over the place. And if I'm still mentally shut down, I'm going to stop. I was like, because like I said, my identity, my self-dignity, everything else, sanity in itself is way, way more important, especially at the age of 21, is more important than the game of basketball. And I was saying this, and I have told my roommates, I was like, guys, I was like, I don't necessarily know what's wrong with me. They were like, oh no, you're all right, you just crazy, Jazz. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just tripping out. Things are not going the way you want them to go, blah, blah, but why not? I had already built myself for this. I was prepared, and they were just like, oh, you're not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. The game didn't go how I expected to go. And I'm not talking about points, rebounds, things like that. I'm talking mentally. It didn't go how I wanted to go. Like I could be in a game, and I scored 24 points, think like scoring, rebound, doing everything. And sometimes I would still blank out and just be stuck. And I'm like, yo, something's not right. This is not okay. And it happened. And it's like right after the game. I can't remember if we won or lost. Can't remember, but I remember walking, off the court, and we had this little hill, like a little concrete hill to get to the top level of our stadium. I remember walking up that hill. I turned left, kept straight, and I turned right into my coach's office, and I was like, I'm done. I knew I had my mind made up. I knew it was something that I needed to do for myself. So I did it because mentally I couldn't take it anymore. Like it was driving me crazy.
So from just like that whole story, it was just like understanding yourself and what was needed for you, right? So for anyone that's like kind of listening, that kind of going through a similar feeling, trying to get out of that cloud that we kind of have over our head sometimes, or what helps you kind of find that clarity, I guess?
Knowing that someday this will be bigger than me.
I love that.
It won't always be about Jasmine Gill. It'll be, about my grandkids, great grandkids, things like that, little cousins, and or just understanding and knowing that, like I said, the person that I built in the mirror, I didn't build that person for myself. I built it for something bigger than me. And that's to leave a legacy to where people understand and people know that it's okay to go through something, but it's also even better when you realize what you're going through and you can figure it out yourself. And it's okay to stop and take a break. I know people overseas right now, and it goes back to sacrificing your self-dignity, your pride, and everything that you built, that person you built in the mirror, for money and for man. And we tend to do that because we think that's the root of it all. And it's not. I feel like knowing who you are, understanding who you are, and knowing that whatever you do is already written, it's okay to pause and take a break, because what's meant to happen is going to happen for you. And I think a lot of people don't stop, and they let themselves be in that slump that they think they're in, because you're not fully looking in the mirror and you haven't grasped the concept of who you're really destined to be necessarily. And because when you're in that phase, or when you're in those moments, you think it's okay to sacrifice yourself for money and man, but it's not. It's like I live by this, sometimes the richest people, all they have is money, and I never, ever, ever want to be one of those individuals that I don't know myself because I sacrifice who I am or who I want to be for something other than me. And as kind of like people say, oh, that's a contradiction, but no, it's not, because I know that who I am is ultimately still bigger than me.
I love that, and I'm so glad we connected on here because I think that's so powerful for athletes to understand. Just like your story doesn't have to just stop with you. Like your story can be the inspiration of another athlete like you.
Yeah.
You can be like someone right now can be hearing your story and thinking, I'm going through that same thing right now. When I get on the court, I just freeze. And
Yes.
but they can hear you talk and kind of see how you came out on the other side, right? You're now playing overseas. You're able to see the world that people aren't able to see nowadays, and because you just kept figuring it out. You kept moving, You stopped a little bit, but you're like, it's gonna be bigger. So we kind of go to the future, right? So how did you kind of land overseas playing ball after you left the game in college and you just like pause a little bit? How did you get overseas?
um, it was extremely difficult. It goes back to the moment when I told you I felt like there was no security, no trust, no belief. I didn't have any of that. No one believed in me. No one trusted me. People were always like, well, if you quit in school, then how we know you're not going to quit, when you get to my team and, things like that. And so I dealt with that a lot. I didn't get an agent. No agent wanted to represent me. Like, hey, well, we see where you stop playing and blah, blah, blah. I kept getting those, I kept coming across those issues. So I just got a trainer, and we just worked. We worked, and I didn't necessarily worry about the troubles or the stresses of what happened to me in college, and I tried to keep my mind away from it. And I think one day I was just on Facebook, and like I was emailing everybody because I had to be my own agent. So I was emailing people, I was sending messages on Facebook, and I finally came across this one guy, and he was like, hey, and I thought it was a scam, but I still had to do it. It was like, okay, let's just do it anyway. Let's see what happens. So he messaged me and he was like, hey, I got your message, and I'm really good friends with the president of a team in Montenegro, XYZ, and they're looking for a player for a little bit because one of their players got hurt and X amount of dollars, which was really nothing. But at this time, I'm like, it's time to redevelop myself as a basketball player. I've already redeveloped myself mentally, so let's scratch the surface as a basketball player again. And so, I flew myself over to Montenegro, and I think I played like 3 or 4 games with them, and that was another conversation for another day. I got seen by a Serbian coach, and they wanted to, buy me out and things like that. So I took that straight from Montenegro after like 3 or 4 games. I went to Serbia, and that's kind of when my career kicked off. Because in Montenegro there wasn't any film, there wasn't no stats, there wasn't anything. So I kind of, lucked up because someone saw me at a game, and I went to Serbia. There were film, there were stats, there was so much, and so I had like a really good game out there. I only played 5 games in Serbia, and I finally could send something to an agent to where they could have something to go off of. You know what I mean? And so from Serbia, things kind of not necessarily took off differently, and that's kind of just basically how I necessarily got here from Serbia. It was got an agent, and my agent got me in Finland. Did relatively well in Finland. From Finland, it was what was it after Finland? Finland, it was Romania. I want to say, could be missing something. No, I'm not. So then after Romania, my agent got me into Greece, and after Greece, it was Australia, and that's when things. I would necessarily say Australia, 2016, is when the mentally tough Jasmine Gill had scratched the surface with the physically tough Jasmine Gill, and that's when my game, both mentally and physically, just took off, and it went back to there's nothing you can tell me that I won't be a great professional basketball player.
just your journey, I think is still it's so far from being like finished, you know.
Yeah,
It's so cool. I can like look back, a year from now, 2 years now, and just see how much more you're doing with just sharing more of your story and your journey. So props to you. So Jasmine, I've kind of worked to wrap up a little bit. So what's next for you as this journey continues?
what's next for me? Now, still playing basketball, obviously. But what's next for me is building on it being bigger than me. So I'm kind of starting to, pave the way for those that come after me, and I feel like I'm doing that. I'm back in school now. I'm, necessarily developing a brand for myself and for my family. I call it the New Family Movement. And I'm just being global, being worldwide. Sooner than later, I want to scratch the surface on, becoming a personal trainer for the youth and giving back to those kids. One day, when I'm done, or even in the middle of basketball, become a coach, just do different things. Like you said, the journey, it continues, and it continues the more and more I keep building and putting the person together that I look at in the mirror every day. Because I'm not fully built. I'm not fully built because life keeps going every single day. Things, I keep scratching the surface on new different things. I keep evolving. I keep learning. I'm still traveling. So that's just what's next. What's next is to keep building off of things being bigger than me.
I'm pumped, and if you ain't helping anyway, please let me know, because I think you're gonna inspire a lot of people through this, like legit. Because I mean, because mental health is one of those things with athletes that we kind of shy off a lot, and I think we need someone that's gonna really be real and be a voice about it. So I think that could really be you. So enjoy the rest of your day. I know on time it is there, but yeah,
13.
Keep balling.
All right. Okay. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Yo, thanks for listening to this episode of the 9 Point Started With a Dream podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, leave a review. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can find more athlete-driven content at 9point.com. Till the next episode, you're only one opportunity away. Peace.